I'm Adam Erby, Associate Curator at George Washington's Mount Vernon, and I'm sitting in front of the Fairfax Ledger, one of the most important documents for rediscovering the furnishings of George and Martha Washington's Mount Vernon. This is a ledger kept by George William and Sally Fairfax of neighboring Belvoir Plantation that contains listings of furnishings that were first at Belvoir and then later moved to Mount Vernon. When Martha Washington died in 1802, the furnishings at Mount Vernon either passed to her grandchildren or were sold off at a series of public sales. When the Mount Vernon Ladies Association acquired Mount Vernon in 1860, the house was virtually empty. Many of the furnishings that had gone to the grandchildren and had gone to others were lost to history. So the Mount Vernon Ladies Association had a conundrum on their hands. How were they to make Mount Vernon look like it did during George Washington's life without all of the furnishings? More than 150 years since, the Ladies Association has relied on the best furnishing evidence they possibly could to restore Mount Vernon as close to the way it looked in George Washington's life as they can. We don't have pristine watercolors of the mansion interiors showing us what the Washingtons had. Instead, we rely on a variety of sources of evidence, including original furnishings, Washington's papers and documents that show us what he purchased to illuminate those items that don't exist, paint analysis, and many other crucial details that show us what Mount Vernon looked like over the course of Washington's life. We're constantly changing this interpretation because there are constantly new discoveries. Not everything is before us today, and I'm sitting in front of one of the key examples of that right now. When this document showed up at auction in September of 2013, we were really excited. This document was kept by the George William and Sally Fairfax of Belvoir Plantation, Washington's nearest neighbors and some of his closest friends. When we looked at the first 4 pages, it was really interesting to us because the document shows furnishings that George William Fairfax purchased from a London upholsterer in March of 1763. It's really remarkable. These furnishings furnished the entirety of Fairfax's home. He purchased them and shipped them 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. So why does this matter to Mount Vernon? In 1774, the Fairfaxes returned to England, not because they were loyalists, but because they had business connections that took them back to England. When they went back, they decided to leave their furniture here, and George Washington presided over a sale in 1774. Now, Washington at that point had just added 2 additions to the mansion, bringing it to its current size. He was badly in need of furniture, but this is 1774. At that point, the non-importation agreements are in place. Also, American Revolution is getting ready to break out, and Washington's not able to import furniture from his traditional sources in London. So, when Washington presided over the sale, he purchased an enormous number of furnishings from this, including 169 pounds worth of furniture. We knew about many of these because they were listed in Washington's own hand, but Washington only recorded small details about them. For instance, Washington purchased 1 mahogany sideboard at the sale. But what is that? The ledger really illuminates this. It says that the sideboard was a fine mahogany 5-foot sideboard with fretwork upon the edges of the top, astragal moldings, and open brackets. And it cost £5, 5 shillings. As curators, we're able to take that and match it up with surviving examples that survived from the 18th century, as well as drawings and other things to figure out what that sideboard looked like, even though it's long since been gone. This ledger also illuminates another reference in Washington's papers that we knew nothing about. At the conclusion of the two auctions that were held at Belvoir, there were a number of the most expensive furnishings that did not sell. George William Fairfax wrote to George Washington, and as a token of friendship, he offered to give George Washington the furnishings in the dressing chamber or the blue damask dressing chamber. But we didn't know what that was. That reference has long been known to us, but there was no specific listing. The ledger has really illuminated this for us. It lists out that furniture over here on this side of the document, and it says that the furniture included 8 mahogany Marlborough stuffed back chairs stuffed in the best French manner, cushioned, bordered, and welted, and covered with Saxon blue silk and worsted damask and brass nailed with 2 rows. These are 8 chairs that were upholstered on the backs and on the seats. There was also a sofa to match. What's extraordinary about this is that the textiles used to make this were so expensive that there are very few suites of back stools in the colonies, and this may be the first sofa that came over to Virginia. So an extraordinary suite of furniture that was very luxurious. There were also 3 matching curtains that went along with this suite in the room. The Washingtons brought this furniture back to Mount Vernon and installed it in their parlor. Washington redid the paint in the parlor to accommodate this furniture. He put a cream colored paint in the parlor. The Washingtons used this furniture throughout the rest of their lives. But until this document showed up, we didn't know anything about it. None of the furniture survives, and this documentation is our first evidence of it. The mission of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association is to show Mount Vernon as it was during George and Martha Washington's life. So when evidence like this comes to light, it's our responsibility to use these to inform our interpretation of the mansion. We plan to work to remake this furniture in the way the Washingtons would have seen it, and to show the luxury of the Washington's parlor and really focus some attention back on that space, which was a mainstay of Martha Washington's daily life. It was where she presided over the tea table, and she showed off her family with the portraits on the walls. So we will be, over the course of the next 6 to 8 months, recreating this furniture and reinstalling it in the room in an attempt to show the parlor as the Washingtons would have seen it for the first time since 1802.